Welcome back to the Creative Process Podcast with myself, Jared Klein. Today is episode 18, and obviously we have a guest on, Anthony Garro. How are you doing today?
Doing all right, man.
Did I pronounce your last name correctly? I know you said it before we started recording, but did I? Yes. Okay.
You nailed it, yes, sir.
Awesome. But yeah, we'll get into Anthony shortly here. Obviously, if you clicked on this podcast, you should know who this man is. Because his work for Boston College has come up, and don't worry, we're going to be talking about that very, very, very extensively, hopefully. But first, I just want to thank the listeners that come out every episode and give feedback. I know I do this very consistently just to make sure, I'm very happy with people that come out, listen week in, week out, and give feedback, really constructive feedback on how the podcast is presented and how it's conducted and everything. I really appreciate that. That's awesome. I hope that, myself and the guests that I have on every week, I hope we push out valuable content to the people that listen, and I hope you guys get something from it. So that's the main purpose. But anyways, Anthony, I know I asked you how you were doing today. I know we talked a little bit before the podcast, but why don't you introduce yourself a little bit for the viewers? And then we can get into what we want to talk about.
Right on. Sounds good. So, like you said, my name's Anthony Garro, lead designer here at Boston College. Kind of been across the country and back the last couple of years. It's my second time around here at BC. Graduated from the University of Rhode Island in spring of 2019. So, going into pretty much year 4, full-time into this. So I had the opportunity to work at URI a little bit right after graduation. Worked there for a year, bounced over here to BC in 2020. So I got to experience the whole remote work and COVID and empty stadiums in that year. And after that, bounced over to Oregon. Had the opportunity to work with their digital team there. Had the great opportunity to work with Josh Heim, their director of digital media, guy that I've looked up to for a long, long time. Really one of the pioneers, I think, in what we do in the digital space. So to be able to work side by side with him was, incredible. So learned a lot there and got to bounce back here to BC after a year. So really my second time around here, kind of get to work through all of the things I saw the first time, and just try to keep improving on them each day. But ultimately just getting into the creative space for me was kind of by chance. My senior year at Rhode Island, just finished up my playing career, after football season ended, and just wanted to, find a way to promote our guys, our players, and tell their story. And, what better way to do it than, making graphics and producing videos. So really it's just a great opportunity every day to keep building and doing what I love. Is kind of where we're at today.
Awesome. I didn't connect the dots when we first started talking that you played at Rhode Island. I did not know that. What position? Yeah. What position did you play?
Yeah, I was a punter there for 4 years. So I got to see the player side of the football space, and to be able to work with that same coaching staff, as a non-player, in a position where you get to sit in meetings and talk about recruiting and that side of things really sparked my interest for making a career out of this, and it's worked out pretty well so far.
So lead designer at BC. You've been there. What'd you say? You said 4 years, right? You've been there for 4 years. 4 years.
I've been into this. Yeah, I've been into this 4 years. Second year at BC.
Oh, second year at BC. Okay. Yeah. Sorry if I missed that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, like, usually the conception is with would you consider Boston College a power? I guess they're Power 5, right? ACC is Power 5.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
So the conception is around Power 5 schools is that the creative team is massive. Do you guys have a massive creative team, or what's your team like?
It's still pretty young. I think there's, some pretty stark differences between, maybe us and, what Clemson has built.
Mm-hmm.
But I think each school is unique in terms of, what administration wants to really build upon. I think we're in a great space right now at BC where we have a lot of talented people on our staff here. Um, right now we're really just looking to keep adding to it. So it is myself. We have Eddie over there in athletics, Eddie Shambarbale. We also have Harrison Kelly, who just joined us from Arizona State. So we're excited to keep building this staff out. And right now it's just the three of us as full time creatives per se.
Mm-hmm.
There's been I think a lot of talk about these massive staffs of, at Clemson, you got maybe a dozen plus creatives. Um, USC, you've got massive staff on the football side of things. So
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, I think it comes down to, um, if you're looking to apply for a job, what can you bring to the table? Um, and where do you think that your skills can best be, put to the test? Do you want to be where expectations are extremely high, or do you want to be at a place where, you're just kind of going through the motions? And I think as a competitive person, you always want to be where, the standards are high and, the
Mm-hmm.
pressure is always pushing you to be at your best. And that's kind of, I think the industry standard right now is, how are you going to keep topping yourself week after week?
Mm-hmm. For sure. So let's get into, the main thing at hand here. Your, I don't want to say your, like as in you, or maybe you did it all by yourself. But like the creative look for Boston College for 2022. I know like when like, that point where all the collegiate football programs start reeling out, you start get to seeing what their look is going to be like for the year. Boston College is stuck out to a lot of people's. I'm surprised you're not smiling ear to ear yet, but you've probably heard this a lot. Like it's one of the best that I think that I've seen. Like in my opinion, it goes like you're in like the group with like USC stuff is done really well for football. Oregon's has done really well. Like the people that you've mentioned that you worked with Oregon and then you talked about USC, like you guys are in there. Like you guys did an amazing job with your development and anything, so in everything. So like from the start of that, were you like thinking about like uniqueness and how to stand out, or were you just trying to develop something that looked really well, or like what was the process of this whole creative look like when you started it, like from point A?
Sure. Well, first, thank you. It means a lot. I think I probably wasn't smiling because of all the late nights. I was just thinking back to it when we were when we were first building this out. But so basically, you get those summer months between June, July, and August, right? You get 3 months out of the year to really look at your brand from a top-down perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really not 3 months for us from a football standpoint because you have official visits in June. So, you're out there with recruits every other day
Mm-hmm.
doing photo shoots and whatnot. But really just the proponent of being able to, put your stamp on a brand, I think is the best part about being a designer because it grows pretty much every week, from award graphics to game day to, whatever else happens in between.
Mm-hmm.
So really those 3 months in the summer kind of give you a chance to evaluate, what did last year look like? What can you do better? How can you be more unique? What are other people doing, um, that you can do or,
Mm-hmm.
could you do differently?
For sure.
Because I think ultimately there's going to be a point where, you can only do so many things with design and, eventually, innovation kind of slows a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, when I was trying to formulate what this was going to look like this year, you think of just, you put Boston College on paper and you kind of write down 10 to 12 things of what do you think of first, when BC comes to your mind? So really what I tried to build out was a kind of traditional, um, you know, classy kind of brand. But then you toss in the Adidas elements
Mm-hmm.
for the sake of recruiting and, trying to stay in tune with what's going on in that space. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I landed at was this kind of grungy, kind of hard nosed, uh, grit type of look, which is, I think, what most people think of when they think of the city of Boston is,
Mm-hmm.
tough, hardworking, gritty. So I try to work in some of those elements to what we do in the design space. So, from a textural standpoint, it kind of looks like, um, it's kind of based in like almost a torn up history book
Mm-hmm.
type of look. So really, there's a lot of uh, different kind of textures from that standpoint. When it first started out, it was just way too busy for me. I messed around with a couple of graphics earlier in the summer with like some torn paper and uh, a lot of overlays. So really, it's kind of started with this big, general look, and then as we've gotten into the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, kind of dialed in a little bit more to more of a minimalist look where you're just dragging and dropping certain elements week to week.
Mm-hmm. So when,
Um,
sorry to interrupt. So
yep.
when developing this with the amount of texture and everything, um, have you, like, is your staff like when like my guess is you're not the only one updating these types of things, right? Like you can't sit here and like update things constantly, or are you? Is that your responsibility?
Yeah. So it's again, it's one of those spots where um, when I came back, I'm pretty much the only person that sits over here in football. We added uh, an incredible graduate assistant, Kelly Coughlin, who's done a excellent job with us so far. Um, she's been a huge addition for us in the recruiting space. Um, but when we were first launching this in June, July, August, even into September, it was primarily my responsibility myself. So
Okay.
um, I think to be able to take on that workload is, a little bit daunting at first, but when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, uh, you know how much work you put into it, and
Mm-hmm.
something you can be proud of.
Yeah. So like what I see like when it comes to this, like as minimalist as like you want to make it sound, like it's very dynamic when it comes to the amounts of textures, the amounts of layering, the amounts of like different types of elements that you have within this whole identity. So like the reason I was going to ask like are you the only one updating this, because I was wondering about the usability between people. I feel like that would potentially become an issue, but I guess when it comes to that, it's all understanding and all program understanding and everything. So if you have the personnel that understand the program, all it takes is one sit down and you're like, hey, this is where things are. This is how you update. If there's smart objects, whatever, go back and forth. And then you probably have like a textures folder that you pick from. If there's something not in the template that you want, you just toss a texture in there and everything like that. So I'm guessing you like kind of streamlined the process of updating things and keeping it consistent just in case you have to do that. Or have you had to do that? Like, has there been any confusion with other people trying to, I guess, achieve the look that you're wanting to keep consistent?
Yeah, you're spot on there. I think that was one of the first things that I was worried about too when I was getting started was, how can, I send this Photoshop file to somebody else and expect them to, do the same kind of look or,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera. But ultimately, what I ended up doing was creating, probably 15 to 20 different base files.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, when you're going in to create something, you already have the major elements in place. So really, what maybe an SID, working with men's hockey or um, basketball or whatever sport it may be,
Mm-hmm.
they already have the foundational elements there. So really, you're just applying a layer style that's already in the Creative Cloud library, built out for them with all the logos, all the fonts, all the textures, etc. It's all there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when you're building out a brand is the most important thing is, ease of access. If you get a one-off graphic that you need to make, do you have the components already there to be able to do that quickly? And that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of, looking back at this now is how interchangeable things are,
Mm-hmm.
within our workflow process. Just being able to have those 15 to 20 files as a foundation, and then to have it, everything after that just kind of falls into place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna compliment like what you said, the interchangeability of like everything. Like there's multiple different types of graphics and different types of like subjects and content that these graphics are centered around, but it all has the same consistent look. Like sometimes the composition isn't always the same, but like you're able to cohesively keep that grungy, torn from a history book, cultured type of look with this whole brand. And I applaud that. Like there's so many different applications for what, especially with collegiate athletics, when it comes to, this type of stuff. There's so many different types of content you have to produce. There's so many different types of, just looking through the project here on Behance, by the way, viewers, link in the description if you want to view this as we're talking about this. Just looking at this on Behance, there's so many different things you had to keep track of with the football team when it came to awards. Like your awards, obviously you have to keep track of in the beginning because they get put on watch lists. Your countdown graphics, you have some recruiting stuff in here. Your like just promotional material, your like paying homage to like alumni, like Boston College alumni, and then you get into game coverage and everything. Like there's so many steps and so many layers to the brand that you have to fulfill while keeping the look consistent, and I think you do an awesome job. The problem that I see within sports, it's like sometimes it's like super templated. It's the same composition every single time. And it's not even like sometimes it, like the composition isn't even flipped or colors aren't changed. Like it's the same thing every single time. And obviously we don't know everyone's workload. We don't know everyone's, how busy everyone is. But the way you keep visual interest, throughout the amount of posts that you do with this and the amount of things that you need to achieve is insane. It is genuinely insane. And I hope like that attention to detail and that attention to, maybe it's attention to audience. Like you've noticed maybe in the past that actually, yeah, I'm going to ask that question. I'm going to have you elaborate on this with your audience. Like when it comes with developing something like this, when like, was visual interest like strongly considered? Like was there past material that didn't really go over well, or like how, like when it came to like visual, oh my god, I'm blanking. Like the compositional difference with the keeping consistent the branding look. You understand what I'm trying to ask? Like was there something in the past that you worked on and were like this was way too consistent? We weren't getting, consistent.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, you're right on there. I think speaking of the Behance page, I had my first time around here at BC. I kind of dove into this style of branding, but I was still, very much in the kind of just scratching the surface with what I wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think towards the tail end of that 2020 season, I got it to somewhere where I was comfortable with it. But again, to have the opportunity to come back and just do it better, do some things differently,
Mm-hmm.
And really approach it with the mindset of how can this brand kind of lay the foundation for the next 5 years. I wanted it to be kind of cohesive in the sense that you don't have to create a brand new kit the next year.
Mm-hmm.
You can take the same elements and you can just do them better. And I think, for the most part here at BC, I think, where we're going as an athletic program, that's probably where we're going to be at. We're a gritty, hardworking kind of program, and I think those same foundational elements are going to stay the same in years to come.
Yeah, it just amazes me every time I even scroll down to things that I've seen over and over and over again, and it's like the knowledge behind wanting to keep the brand as consistent as you can, but then also making sure the visual interest is still there. It's insane. You don't really see that much, and it tells a lot about the creator. So kudos to you and your team, man.
Thank you.
So now let's get a bit more broad about sports design, right? So we're talking about how creative, this look is and everything, right? Actually, I'm gonna preface this. I talked about this with Mark Majewski. I think I pronounced his last name correctly.
Yeah.
Let me just look back. I'm nervous. I just want to make sure I don't pronounce his last name.
No, I know Mark through Twitter. He actually worked here at BC for a bit, and he really laid the foundation for kind of where I'm at today here at BC.
Awesome.
He was kind of the OG creator here for BC, and then bounced over to the Bruins. So he's still around here a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been meaning to connect with him a little bit more, but his stuff with the Bruins is just incredible. His motion graphics. That Bruins brand is by far my favorite in the NHL, or maybe even the professional space as a whole. Just like you're saying, the overall uniqueness of it, it tells the story of Boston, intertwines all the different personalities the Bruins have. Mark just does an awesome job. Hoping to connect with him again this year soon.
Yeah, kudos to Mark. Having him on the podcast was awesome. It was like just talking to him about certain things and getting to know him a little bit more. It was awesome. But yeah, so I was talking with Mark about does what we do push the needle when it comes to getting more people in the stands, or getting more people in the arena, or getting more people. Yes, it may get more eyeballs, but when it comes to sports, it comes down to tickets, right? It comes down to sales. Was that a conversation when developing things this year and in past years, I guess? What's your experience with considering that type of concept?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the world we live in now, obviously everything evolves back to social media. You get the Boston College fan that has been around for 30 plus years. He's probably mid 60s maybe, and he's probably found his way onto Twitter. So how do you best approach that audience to get him continuously coming back into the stadium, to be a season ticket holder for X amount of years? What kind of content you're putting out day to day is most likely seen by more people than you can even imagine. Even this week here at BC, we have the red bandana game on Saturday. So we'll be wearing, special edition uniforms to honor Wells Crowther, who passed in the 9/11 attacks, and we honor him every year in this red bandana game. And it's really cool to see the Boston College community come together, around this tradition. And the content that we'll put out this week really reaches a lot of people, tells Wells' story, and really connects everybody in a unique way. And ultimately, on Saturday, the game day experience, I think, will be just incredible based on what we're able to do in the digital space to bring people in there. And it's really cool just to see how it all intertwines at the end of the day. And like you said at the beginning of the season, that's the first conversation we'll have is, what are these people looking for? Are they looking for high-end graphics? Are they looking for storytelling and videos? Are they looking for behind-the-scenes content? So how do we really push that needle, like you're saying, in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, when you're addressing a brand from start to finish, you want to make sure that all of those details are in place to ensure that they're staying connected week to week, game to game, with what players are doing, with what's going on in the locker room, what the players are saying. And as a creator, basically your job is to, take that story and, intertwine it together um, for a season long campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately that you'll be able to track from August, the first snap of camp, all the way through the bowl game. So um, to put together a season-long graphics package, I think is a lot. Um, a lot of groundwork, but at the end of the day, your product really speaks to the fan experience and what kind of opinion do the fans have about their team, and that's why we work so many late nights. Is that's what we're thinking about at the end of the day is how
Mm-hmm.
can we impact somebody that we don't even know. So,
Mm-hmm. For sure. So when it comes to like considering that going season to season, what do you think is a bad thing to do for a brand? Like what things are you guys aiming not to do?
I think the worst thing that you can do is not adapt. It's like if you're doing kind of something like along the lines of take in-game Twitter, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're just pushing out, um, just literal flat tweets, no media, um, you're not really telling the story of what these players are doing. So you take a program um, like Tennessee, like USC, you look at their in-game content, you're familiarizing fans with the players' faces. So
Mm-hmm.
basically our job is to humanize the process of, what's going on the field and how do the fans connect with the players
Mm-hmm.
so that, you may lose a game by 20, you may lose a game by 1, but through that in-game experience, you're building the bridge between the players and the fans so that they develop that relationship that kind of makes them feel what the players feel and vice versa. So you're just developing, that experience for them. And especially now with the prospect of NIL, how can you, maybe build a relationship between a player and a fan, and how can that relationship be, mutual to one another?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna ask about NIL.
Mm-hmm.
How I guess when that is considered, I think. Well, I guess since NIL, let's just talk about this. Since NIL, I think more player content and more fan to player, like having the fans learn about the players and putting the players rather than like their personality and their persona as a player, not just the number and last name on their back, is considered a little bit more. By a little bit more, I should say a lot more. Just simply because there's more emphasis on these players now, right? I think the introduction of NIL. I know it's been, geez, how long ago? When did it actually like come into fruition? NIL.
One is really, I mean, you could say just 2020
Just
really
2020.
really came into play, I think.
Okay. Um. Oh, geez, I forgot where I was saying. What was I saying? I know I was talking
Just
about NIL, but and then I
yeah,
wanted to. I forgot. Oh
the
no.
the kind of the relationship between the players and the fans.
Oh yeah. So like building that rapport and having that like now fans are able to look a little bit deeper and programs are able to put more emphasis on these players because the players are in a way like, yes, there's tradition and everything, but if you don't have a good football team or entertaining players and personalities to kind of get behind, the support isn't going to be there. So I think putting more emphasis, so we're seeing that more and more and more and more and more. So I guess when I'm curious to ask about different mediums of the brand. I haven't seen, any like video of the brand. I haven't looked on like BC football like extensively, so I haven't been able to see different mediums and different types of content when being considered like with this brand that you've structured here. How was that kind of attacked? Like, do you keep that same tone of, hard-nosed grittiness, or is it still, or like, is there more emphasis put on like personality, or is it just kind of like all hard work, that type of Boston type of stuff? You know what you know what I'm asking. Sometimes I don't say questions as well as I want to, and it just all comes out a jumbled mess.
No, you're good. Yeah, kind of what we try to formulate is basically, you're kind of walking the line of, you want to showcase that you're, obviously a serious program,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, you want to have the fundamental aspect of, hey, these guys are student athletes. At the same time,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of showcasing, these players in a different light than many, people might see them in. So how can you take like, a standard practice, for example, you do a mic up, you show guys walking in. I think the biggest trend this summer was, you stick a whiteboard up before practice and, you put a question up and players come up and answer and, fans get to see him in a lighter sense of, than, putting somebody on the ground. So basically, how can you build that relationship between player to fan, fan to player? So basically what we look at trying to do is, you take your core group of guys, who are your playmakers, and how can you best promote them in the sense that, fans will recognize them in the community. So basically, you just a lot of content is just based around, what they're doing on a day to day. So we get a day in the life video. You showcase guys off the field, and really just comes down to how much access are you able to have these players.
Mm-hmm.
You can follow them everywhere, or total opposite of, maybe a team doesn't get that access and you aren't able to build that relationship. So basically it just comes down to how much time do you want to invest in that side of things and what kind of return on investment are you going to get?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like that. I like that consideration of player a lot. Like, I really like that. And then the emphasis on, I'm going to reiterate myself, the emphasis on showcasing them to the fan and developing more of a personality and developing more of a, more of a person, because, football is crazy. You have the helmet on the whole game, most of the time. If they're an impact player, they have the helmet on. You don't really see their face when they're playing. Otherwise, like when baseball and soccer and basketball, like their face and their, like their image is seen the whole time, to where, they're in pads and behind a face shield or a face mask 90% of the time when they're on the football field. So I think that implementation of, showcasing the players and being able to introduce them and showcase them a little bit more to the fan base rather than just a number and a name on the back of a jersey, I feel like that should only bring more clicks and more engagement and more understanding from the fan base that follows that. So yeah, it's awesome. We experimented that with a little bit of that this year with our minor league team, and we had a brand new social team. Well, the senior designer that I work under, he's been with the team for a while, and same with the VP of marketing, but social media manager and myself kind of came in with new ideas, and we're like, we need to show the fans the players. Like, they didn't really do that much in the past, and so we did that throughout the whole season, and oh my goodness, like night and day comparing seasons between fan interaction and even people wanting autographs, of these guys, because they're able to see them more, It's more of an understanding, and I think personally it only betters the reputation that the program has, because they're able to see, like for example, this is awesome. We were able to showcase some of these players, early in the season, showcase their personalities, and then let's say something bad happens on the field, or like they're not playing well, or let's say they get in a fight or something. There's a little bit more understanding there. They understand who this player is. His personality is happy-go-lucky. He just got pissed off. Sometimes with people that don't showcase the players, all the fans know is how they play on the field. If they play bad, like their own reputation is completely based off of how they play on the field. So when something goes wrong, people could be bashing the organization, bashing the player. That happens way too much, to where now if you showcase the player, showcase the personality, people are able to understand the side of things, the more personable side of things, to where if that was like your cousin and he ended up punching someone in the face for no reason, or you don't know why, you'd have like, it's I guess, to put that, like, the understanding is there, being able to relate.
Absolutely.
I guess that's the word. The relation between fan and player and program and fan is a little bit easier to get through. That line, I think, before NIL and before, I don't want to say mass produced, but, thought about content was produced. I think that line was super hard, to where now that line is being crossed multiple times, and it's really easy to bridge that gap now, I feel.
Absolutely. I mean, even just the basic, features of Instagram and Twitter, of just being able to collab with players and, introducing, their followers to,
Mm-hmm.
to BC football content. And, we pick up followers, they pick up followers. You're able to introduce basically fans into their whole life. And,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, that relationship only grows to be more beneficial throughout their 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love it, man. It's always awesome to see, like, even static stuff, like even static non-video, you see more player driven, like, oh, what's this player listening to pregame? Yep. And then you label their whole pregame playlist, like that type of stuff is being seen more, and it's awesome. It only benefits the situation for both parties. I think it makes it a lot more relatable. But yeah, Anthony, I mean, we talked about pretty much everything we wanted to talk about today. Thank you for coming on today. It's been awesome. Episode 18. Again, thank you for taking the time out of your day, especially you've mentioned long nights a handful of times. So I was hoping this Monday, maybe last week you were looking forward to this Monday, and then here I come along inviting you to be on a podcast.
No, it's a great end to my Monday here. Really refreshing to hear your perspective. Obviously, thank you so much for all the good words.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to staying connected with you down the road, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah, no problem, man. For the listeners, all of Anthony's stuff, I was going to say Anthony, but I also said all and Anthony connected there, so that sounded weird. All of Anthony's stuff will be down below, his socials, and I know I'll have his Twitter and his portfolio down there, and then obviously the link to that, the BC football project that he has on his Behance will be linked down below, so you can follow along. That was a little bit a little bit earlier in the podcast. But yeah, so all his stuff is down below. Make sure you follow him. Make sure you keep up with what he's doing. For myself, he's been an inspiration to kind of look at and, see what he's been pushing out. And a lot of that thinking and development into basically what we talked about is being considered currently in our development of the new creative for next year. So we're using BC football as a benchmark. That's damn sure. I can tell you that.
Oh, man.
But yeah, anyways, listeners, again, thank you. Anthony, thank you. And as we close out, as always, make sure you tell someone that you love them today. All right. We will see you guys next time for episode 19. Peace.